I don't know if you were like me as reading the first reading of Paul's letter to the Romans this morning, but I can't help but hear at this particular juncture of the letter, this is when he starts making his mission appeal. You know, he does a little brown nosing. He's telling this group that he's writing to that you are full of goodness, filled with knowledge, able to admonish. He's buttering them up a little bit, right? And then this is what I aim to do, right? This is what I've done, and I look to do even more. Paul is shrewd. He's doing very good things, but he's doing exactly what Jesus is basically pointing out in the gospel. He's not commending the steward for being dishonest. He's highlighting it's like we have to be shrewd. We have to be crafty. As children of the light, in sharing the gospel, there's a bit of craftiness we have to employ, a little bit of shrewdness in sharing the good works of the Lord and helping to care for souls. The kind of shrewdness that it takes for like you see stereotypically that like my mother, she wants my dad to be more open to something. She has to kind of shrewdly work the conversation to make him think that it was his idea first, right? Stuff like that. And so too when we're sharing the gospel, we want people to encounter Christ, but sometimes we have to kind of craft the journey a little bit so that it's not just you saying, here's what you should believe, here's what you should know, but for them to encounter that truth coming from within themselves. And sometimes more people are prone to hear something if they hear themselves say it or come to this conclusion of truth. There's a craftiness of meandering. The ancient Greeks called it the Socratic method, and we tend to do this. It's the idea of asking questions. But on top of that, the thing that caught me this morning that stopped me was this series of compliments that Paul writes to this audience to Rome. He's acknowledging them. You are full of goodness, filled with all knowledge, and able to admonish one another. Do we ever consider that as a good thing? The ability to admonish one another. Right? Be able to correct. That's a good and virtuous task, to appropriately provide correction for one another. Admonish. I think at the very core, that's how you really show love to one another. However, sometimes we get it messed up. Gosh, I see this in the world. We see this all the world. It's done so poorly and so wrongly. We're sometimes so quick to point out faults and flaws, but we do so in the heat of passions, emotions, still full of anger and vitriol. Is that the kind of admonishment that ultimately Christ is desiring us to do? So the first place I think when we're invited to admonish and correct well is that first and foremost, am I seeking to care for this person's soul? Do I have that first and foremost as a priority in my heart and in my mind? When I make this pronouncement, when I make this post on Facebook. Am I seriously intending for this person to have a deeper conversion of heart, to kind of know and encounter the Lord in a deeper and to conform their lives more to His? That's what we have to ask ourselves. Whether it's someone we see far from the distance who we will never have a chance to talk to, but we seem to be very comfortable admonishing them from that distance. Do we care for their souls, first and foremost? Have that as our priority. Are we doing so in a measured and disciplined fashion? Are we letting our passions get a hold of us so that it actually hurts and affects our souls more? I think this is something that it's good for all of us to consider. I mean, imagine, what if all we ever did, the way we admonish, like if, just think about how would you like someone to come to you, to properly correct you, to bring something to your attention? Would you want someone to come to you and just kind of start poking at your chest? Do you know what you did? Do you know what you did? Yes, that's going to be very effective. It's going to cause me to be very open to hearing what your observation, and to really take that into consideration and prayerfully. So therefore, how does it invite us to therefore? One part of learning to admonish well, remember, it's the third of this three. Full of goodness first. We have to first and foremost pursue goodness. Pursue that virtue. To have a sense of what it is the good. What is the moral goodness, so that we can correctly identify when something is wrong or right. Filled with all knowledge. Do we have a deep and abiding understanding, or at least something like of the teachings of the church, right? Like a knowledge of a proper understanding of what the church teaches, and that could get a sense of how someone is maybe properly or improperly living it out, that we can therefore provide some correction. And then, putting those two together, able to identify, am I loving that person enough maybe do I pull them aside? Do I first and foremost start with my own heart and say, you know what? I need to love on this person, figure out, Lord, how would you like me? I noticed this happening in this person. It could affect other people. It could do X, Y, and Z. How would you like me to do this work of mercy, of admonishing the sinner? Of bringing clarity to the ignorant. These are all spiritual works of mercy. So let's see how the Lord is challenging us today with this, to see how we can learn to do that well. And, because I think it's so important, especially nowadays where everything gets so public, and we can be so quick, and to allow our passions to overtake what really should be grounded in the spiritual care of the Lord. Let the Lord guide this action so that we're able to fraternally correct one another, our brothers and sisters. Am I open to that correction myself? Let's seek to do that well. And let's see how the Lord is challenging us personally where we need to grow in, so that we can ultimately work with one another, to help one another, maybe to divest of things that need to be divested from our lives, whether it's certain particular attitudes, behaviors, habits. Because ultimately at the core of it is to care for each other's soul, to help each other grow more deeper in union with Christ, to conform each of our hearts to the heart of Christ.